And welcome to another edition, post-game edition of Spits and Suds. I'm Gavin Spittle of 1053 The Fan. Happy holidays to you and yours. Wow, did we get a present tonight at the American Airlines Center? What an absolute tilt, playoff-like. The barn was rocking. The Frosties were flowing. Whew, it's a beautiful day in Hockeyville here in DFW. I'm Gavin Spittle of 1053 The Fan, joined by my friend and colleague and the man who hosts Star Stack, also one of the top writers for D Magazine, at David Castillo, joins us tonight. How are you, my friend? That was a fun one.
I'm doing good. By the way, you've used that word before. Frosties is a reference to what is my ignorant question of the week. Frosties is a reference to
Frosties is a Canadian word for
beer.
lager, yes.
Okay, all right. Well, like sometimes you do that. You use like various like lettuce for like hair, and I was just completely kind of confused and flabbergasted. But anyways,
I believe in another life that like I'm a Mississauga kid,
Saskatchewan. Yeah, we're both starting to sound like freaking Pierre McGuire now, like just listing random Canadian like towns in the middle of rural Canada. But anyways, yeah, doing good, man. It was the kind of performance that I feel like we've been waiting for the Stars team in a while, and so it was good to see them deliver.
Yeah, it was. Well, let's start with Thomas Harley being sick, so he could not go tonight. Brendan Smith elevates, as well as Nils Lundqvist, into the lineup. But the big story that everyone was looking at was only been 3 games, and Lian Bichsel playing on that first line pairing with Miro Heiskanen, and boy, did that deliver.
Yeah, that was fantastic. I'm somebody that like if you follow me on Twitter, then you see a little bit more "I told you so" than you'd like, and that's because I take things personally. When I write about prospects and I see the lack of traffic on those posts, kind of realizing that, well, people just want to hear about the Dallas Stars. They don't want to hear about what's going on in Cedar Park. And again, this is not directed at, especially like Spits and Suds fans, but man, I lower my head in shame, and I feel like, why doesn't anyone pay attention to me? And so when Bichsel comes up and delivers like that, I feel justified. I feel vindicated. And so, even though I'm kind of just being a little facetious here, like I think for the most part, we've seen the best, and you might say like worse. There were some like some hairy moments with Bichsel, but really seemed like everything that he offers. Which, no, he's not a puck mover. He's not going to score a bunch of goals. He's not going to be Thomas Harley last year. However, he does have an accurate shot. And that was like one of the things that I thought my mind was playing tricks on me in the AHL, because I would notice that this would happen quite often. He takes a shot, and yeah, sure, he didn't always score, but it seemed to kind of find the net, and at minimum kind of created rebounds. And so it's been great to see him just kind of be the player that I thought he was as early as last year, and just kind of he still has like some things he's got to learn, but he is clearly part of this team's top 6.
Yeah, he is, and I love the pairing. I think it was terrific to watch, and I love how he puts pucks on net and is not afraid to do that. And I love his work in the corners. In fact, you actually tweeted out a question during the game: which NHL defender come to mind when you think of strong along the wall with the puck? And I was thinking, and with Liam, you kind of all of a sudden draw a size comparison, and your mind automatically thinks of bigger guys. And when he was at his peak with the Bruins, I thought Zdeno Chara was terrific along the boards, and you couldn't get that puck out and you couldn't move him.
Yeah, I mean that's that's quite the that's quite. I mean, it's even though it's kind of superficial. Like I agree. Like I do think there's something to that, and it's kind of it speaks to how unique I think Bichsel really is. Like even just as an NHL player in general, right? I mean, you're just not going to find 6'7" defenders that kind of move like he does. And yeah, people kind of talk about Jamie Oleksiak. Like I kind of think of and it's a comparison that I used last year when I kind of did a lengthy film room breakdown. Again, Star Stack plug.
I love it.
Don't forget to subscribe. which is that there's a lot of Chris Tanev to his game as well. A lot of like
Yes.
Anton Strawman, these players that are very good at retrieving the puck, who you don't necessarily associate with good puck skills, right? Usually, shutdown defenders you kind of think of, mean, nasty types, as opposed to players that can be quite elegant. And that is Bichsel to a T, a B, S. I'm not sure.
Well, even after the game, he talked about he still needs a lot of things to work on, which you absolutely love players to hear, or hear from players. The other aspect is the calmness in which he plays. It's a fast game. It's faster than in Sweden, faster than in Texas. I got to tell you, David, I know the Stars organization wanted him to stay in North America, but maybe that pro league in Sweden helped him as well. He got a lot of minutes there. So, I mean, his development, is really, really impressive. He's only 20 years old. And, I mean, you watch Stars fans on Twitter, and rightfully so. They talk about his physicality. I absolutely love that. Anyone that listens to Spits and Suds knows that Gavin loves himself some physicality.
Some old school hockey.
I am an old school, absolutely kind of guy. And that's why I loved a game like tonight. At the same time, I'm looking at, you're right, the work in the corners, and I'm looking at that breakout skating ability where he's not just trying to get rid of the puck, he's holding it and skating with it. And that's a veteran move. That's a guy that I feels like he's been in the league for 5 or 6 years, in that he's not just looking to give up the puck. If there's an opening, he's going to start moving the puck. And that's impressive for a guy his size.
And I think that's what also separates, the kind of really sort of nuanced and effective 3-zone defenders, right? Which is the ability to really control territory. Bichsel is somebody that really kind of wants the puck, and he wants to really kind of play with the puck. And I would, man, I would actually sort of kind of counter your love of old school hockey, which I love old school hockey myself, man. I got into it watching those stupid Don Cherry videos. Still get up for a fight every now and then.
Rock 'em, sock 'em.
I would actually say I think big. Okay, so I don't know how to word this without sort of sounding like a hot take. I don't like his physicality that much. I think he gets too enthusiastic with it, and when he does, that's kind of when he gets out of position. I want to see him like play to his strengths. I want to see him be physical every now and then, but I do want to see him kind of rein it in a little bit. There were a couple times where he went headhunting, and that's kind of when sort of Dallas was kind of left with their nose open. So
yeah.
I'll push back a little on that, but either way, every part of his game is something that you kind of like to see, with the exception of, some of those weak side mistakes. But
well, it was interesting because just last week we were talking about, to get, you need to give as far as a trade. And if you want a marquee player coming here, and I think because of these last 3 games, David, you can't send him back down. You can do the paper road trip to save, some cap money, but he's in your top 6 unless something happens. And the second thing, you certainly cannot trade him at this point. And if you are trading him, I mean, the tape is out. You're going to get a really nice player in return. I don't think Jim Nill would do that. When you watch him after 3 games, and I'm not trying to overanalyze this or get the hype machine rolling, but there are just so many aspects of the game. He's more advanced than Harley after 3 games. I mean, you're just like looking at this and saying, wow, this is the equivalent of trading for a defenseman. This is maybe why Jim Nill and the organization wanted him up, to see where they stand. And now they've found out that, this is a guy that they can put in their top 6, and maybe defense isn't the top priority. Maybe it's getting a guy that can put the puck in the net.
But so not even for Noah Dobson? I'm just trying to start some crap, but
I'll always add because you can always be better. But I'll go one further. When you look at the defensemen on this roster, I think Matt Dumba's the odd man out as far as if you have to put a player on waivers, which I don't know if they can, because he's got next year as well.
Yeah, I mean that's going to be kind of an impossible situation, but also like a situation that sort of Jim Nill and the Dallas Stars just kind of have to eat. You just have to accept that hey,
Yeah.
here's our sunk cost, and we're just going to try to kind of figure out a way around it because if they truly do believe in the concept of win now, which I usually roll my eyes over, well then you have to accept that Bichsel makes your blue line better, and that's just kind of that. I mean, that's just meritocracy 101, and he's earned it. Even though definitely there's an element of like, well, guys like Dumba and Smith, like haven't exactly set the world on fire. But I think the other thing too is that and I was kind of mostly kidding about the Noah Dobson thing, but I also wonder like how good this top four could be if it's just as much as crazy as it sounds, all lefties, right? Like
Yeah.
with say Lindell and Heiskanen on the top pair, and say Harley and Bixel on the second pair. I
Yeah.
mean, is that not your top four configuration?
Right. Yeah. I mean, we saw it at one point tonight where the puck just jumped over Heiskanen because he was on his backhand. He was on his weak side. So that's going to happen every once in a while. But yeah, I totally can see that. But I'll also say, David, I thought Brendan Smith played really well tonight. And I'm not saying that like he can do this game after game. He's an NHL veteran, logged a lot of minutes in this league, but as that seventh defenseman, that's a pretty good fill in if you need it due to injury.
Now, would you say this if he didn't get in a fight? I'm just trying to like put your old school
Oh, good
bias.
point. No, that's a good point, and I would. Yeah, no, that's a
No,
great
but
point.
I mean, no. I'm kind of being like cheeky here, but yeah, no. Listen, Smith is the kind of player. I mean, it's worth remembering that there was a time when there were actually quite a few Stars fans who really wanted Brendan Smith because he was kind of like he was sort of like kind of another Anton Strawman, like in his prime, and for the longest time he was just kind of an underrated defender. And I think you still see moments like that. You still see moments of Brendan Smith kind of being able to do things that he used to do, where he was just kind of like a really quality five tools defender.
Mhm.
And yeah, that day is kind of mostly past, but he still has his moments. And yeah, of course, it was nice to see him stick up for Heiskanen / Oettinger there.
The last game that Jake Ottinger gave up 4 goals, great work by our producer Gregory Finley, November 25th against Carolina with that tough third period. That's 7 games ago. And if you look at, let's even look at the last 5. Tonight, 1 goal. St. Louis, the last game, 1 goal. 3 against Nashville, 2 against Calgary, 3 against Vegas. And then you look at the year, 2.32 goals against, 913 save percentage, 3-1 win. That is absolutely great against the Capitals. I'm telling you, I think the Capitals can win this game if Jake Ottinger doesn't make some of those saves in the first period. They were all over the Stars at times with quality shots. That high tip was working so well for the Capitals early, and Ottinger made some key stops.
Yeah, it's that I think that was maybe if there's a kind of negative here, it's I mean Washington is a good team. Like let's kind of just
Really
be
good.
clear about that. I mean it's one of those things that like fans don't always want to concede, which is that well, hey, sometimes it's not that you look bad, it's that the other team made you look bad. And Washington definitely had those moments. It's just also like crazy, not to like focus too much on Washington, but my God, Connor McMichael, talk about just kind of out from the abyss. I mean, not that he was problematic or
Yeah.
a bust or anything like that. And I always found Connor McMichael such an interesting prospect because if you remember, he was the prospect that Joe McDonnell mentioned in the lead up to that 2018 draft. And of course, then Dallas ended up drafting Ty Dellandrea instead, which I always found kind of fascinating. I always thought, like, wow, that's interesting that a scout would just mention a player by name, despite the fact that that's. I mean, was that like a? I don't know. Anyways, um, listen, we're not going to do what it could have, should have, and I'm not like criticizing Dallas for drafting Delandria instead of McMichael. That was an awful draft. A lot of teams, ended up picking busts in that draft, but it's yeah. Washington had their moments. I think they also kind of shanked on moments. I mean, this game easily could have gone either way, but it was still like a good example of, I think, Dallas kind of playing relatively composed. Jake Andre at his best. We saw some of the top players be their top players, like Hintz. And yeah, I mean, in addition to the power play, scoring a goal, I mean, a lot of things. Also, the penalty kill was as good as I've seen it all year. Like, it was just
It was
absolutely. I mean,
terrific.
it was just like a pure power kill. They were threatening Washington in addition to shutting them down. And so, yeah, really not a whole lot of criticism against Dallas in a game that was, involved a tough opponent and a very good
Well,
goaltender on the other end.
yeah, I mean, the penalty kill against a good Washington power play, that was certainly one of the keys to the game. They were terrific tonight. I'm fine with talking Washington for a second, David, because we need to highlight the turnaround of this team. This to me is the story of the NHL this year. Chris Patrick, first year as a GM, and Brian McClellan, who was bumped upstairs. So 2 promotions in the Capital organization. But I mean, you look at some of the pieces on this team. You just mentioned one. I mean, what a rebound as far as Pierre-Luc Dubois, and he was all over the ice tonight. And I mean, when Pierre-Luc Dubois is focused and playing, he is sensational on the ice. So I thought he was great. I think the world of Jacob Chikrin. We've always talked about Jacob Chikrin on Spits and Suds. That was a terrific trade, acquiring him from Ottawa. So
We've
it,
also, real quick, we've also always talked about Matt Waugh, who's just absolutely
we
fantastic.
absolutely have, yes. And I thought he was terrific tonight. And you know what? I know a lot of fans don't like him, but Tom Wilson really plays hard. And I mean, that's a guy that doesn't mind mixing it up, dropping the mitts, but let's be honest, has really good skills as well. And this is a team, and they're older, but not playing with a TJ Oshie, not playing with an Ovechkin. And I just think they're a really good team. So I listed this as one of the better wins of the year for the Stars, because I thought they matched their intensity. I thought they matched their energy. I like how they ramped up their physicality. Their work in the corners, I thought, was really good. And once again, it goes down to, the defense of this Stars and the way they've been playing since Bichsel's arrival, to me, really changes the dynamic of this team, because similar to last year, David, and, it's not the same, but it kind of is. When Ryan Suter went from first pairing and all those minutes down to a third pairing, you actually saw Ryan Suter, pretty good for the Stars. And it's the same thing. If you could take Leah Bushkin and move him down, if you can, move these players down, it's going to make your defense as a whole so much better. And, I think we saw that tonight. And we saw a great Rope Hintz. We saw what Rope Hintz can do. When Rupe Hintz has those games, we just need it on a consistent level. He's going to put up points, but tonight was the dominant Rope Hintz center that we all desire.
And also, don't forget, we saw a little bit of hints with Robertson and Bork, which I thought was a well earned, and I also think a long time coming promotion for Bork. Even though I don't know if you could call it a promotion, I think it was kind of just like the lines kind of being blended there for a minute.
Yeah.
But to me, I guess we can save like the Bork discussion for kind of later. But I would say that it's a discussion that I think is going to be had for a while. I think it's going to take a while for Stars fans to really kind of figure out, and really for Dallas to figure out who exactly, is this, are we looking at the, worst seasons of Robertson and Hintz's career? Maybe. However, it's not going to matter if they can just turn it on in the second half of the season and carry that momentum into the playoffs, right? I mean, because nobody really cares about the point totals in the regular season if the performance is there, and specifically if the performance is there, in the postseason, right? Not just in the postseason, but at a level that we know they're capable of. And I think that's kind of the real litmus test for those two players. That's not to say that the criticism is in any way invalid. Just that we're still 30 games in the season. We're still learning things. We still know why, like, for example, Robertson has struggled, with the whole foot injury. So yeah, it's, we're giving it time, but it's still good to see them get kind of ahead of schedule, so to speak.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. You're absolutely right. Yeah, not too many negatives to say, tonight. Robertson with 2 assists. Yeah, Maverick Bork getting a nice assist. Hintz
By
with
the
2 goals.
Real quick, I do know a negative, but I mean, let me know if if you have a talking point first.
No.
Okay, so
Roll.
Logan Stankoven, man, like when he missed that empty net off the backhand, and it really didn't have a whole lot. I mean, I do wonder, and by the way, this is not me criticizing Stankoven and saying like, oh, he's doing fantastic. Rookies do not score the way Stankoven is. Even though he's slowed down, the way he has scored at least last year postseason, and for the most part throughout this year. But I wrote about Stankoven as well. Did some kind of film room. I am starting to question, I should say, how good of a shooter Stankoven really is, because man, he's missed, he's taken shots from like way too far out, and just kind of seems to be I think his future is as a playmaker. That's what I want to say. I don't think his future is as a 30-40 goal scorer or anything like that.
I think maybe as well when they started juggling the lines that affected him. Similar to maybe we're questioning Joe Pavelski's departure with Hintz and Robertson, maybe being kind of taken Wyatt Johnston away from him has hurt him. So I think that's to be determined as well. But at the same time, that first line seems to be getting a bit more consistent. I know Wyatt Johnston's playing better, obviously Hintz and Robertson. So, I the fourth line you'd love to see score every once in a while, but they're putting really nice pressure. Oscar Beck with a nice chance tonight, so I think that was really good. I really was impressed by tonight's win, and I think it's not to simplify it, David, but if they could do this game on a more consistent level, that's the Stanley Cup contender I can see.
Well, I mean, the other thing too is that a lot of their underlying numbers, and I realize this is where like people kind of tune out, oh, another analytics discussion, and don't really want to hear it. But a lot of the underlying numbers for Dallas identifies them as a legit contender. They're top 10 in a lot of very key categories. Now, of course, the power play is not one of them, as we're more than
Yeah.
familiar with. But I do think there's something to sort of being patient with a team. And I think even though like this game, I doubt they're going to look like this the next game, right? Because they've kind of done this thing all year where it's like, oh, there's a great performance, and then sort of lay an egg, kind of like they did with like Chicago and Nashville. But I still think that the team, largely speaking, is very, very good. I think at this point, it's just going to kind of be a matter of, well, are they good enough? Are they good enough for this kind of new look, Central, where it's them versus Winnipeg and Minnesota, and maybe even Colorado. Maybe like that'll be interesting if Colorado can kind of figure into the top three now that they've quote unquote fixed their goaltending. Granted, I don't think they have. However, it's hard to argue that they didn't at least upgrade over what they previously were working with, and that's wholesale, right? They got rid of their starter and their backup, and now they're just
I think we're going to find out in the next week, and that's why tonight was a nice win. But Wednesday night, if they look worse than tonight, it might have to do with the Maple Leafs, like you were talking. The other side gets paid as well, and the Maple Leafs are a terrific team. I understand many think the Rangers are down, but if Shesterkin plays, it's and that's a team that the Stars haven't had the best success against, like the Maple Leafs. Monday you got Utah, and then Friday you got the Wild after Christmas. So.
Honestly, what team do they have Monday?
In Salt Lake City against Utah.
By the way, I just want to say real quick, the Toronto game, don't take any lessons. No matter what Dallas looks like, good, bad, whatever, don't take, like, for whatever reason, every time these two teams play each other, and this is beyond like the fact that they tend to lose against Toronto, even when Toronto's bad and Dallas is good. The games are just awful. I mean, is that just like, that's not just me, right? I mean, they
Yeah.
just seem to be real like slow slog,
Right.
swamp. I mean, I'm not looking forward to that at all.
The
And it's crazy
storyline
because
is
I love
going
those
to be what uniform Mama Robertson's wearing. And rightfully so, by the way.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't even know what to say. By the way, do we still want Nick Robertson or no?
I like him as a player, but no, not at this point. No, I think if I mean, the problem is if you get an impact player, it's going to cost you something, and that's I don't know what the Stars can give up. That's going to put them put them in the running. So I mean, I talked about it, after they played the Blues on Saturday. I thought Doug Armstrong did a terrific job with what he gave up for Cam Fowler. I thought that was a really nice piece. In fact, you get him for a year and basically 3 quarters. That's pretty good, to trade a second round pick and get a fourth back. And then, you also threw in a player that, yeah, he's young, 23 years old, but really hasn't been able to make it to the AHL yet. He's been playing mostly in the ECHL.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my only thing with that move is that, like, well, how exactly does St. Louis kind of see themselves? Like, do they see themselves as a team that is ready to contend again, or not? Now, clearly they believe so, but it's a very different move than what they did. I mean, I was a huge fan of what they did with Broberg and Holloway.
Yeah,
in the offseason. That was absolutely brilliant.
that was
stuff.
really nice.
But I'm curious because I mean St. Louis has been really good under Montgomery. So
yes. And I think David that
yeah
was the reason that they're looking at the playoff picture and saying we can hang around. We have the ability to be in this mix.
And I do think they have potential. I mean, like if there's someone that decided to like add somebody good at the trade deadline, maybe like a couple pieces, I think they would be a team you'd want to start giving respect to, just because the core is still strong. I mean, it's still a really deep blue line. Yeah, sure, Colton Parayko is not who he once was, but I still think he's a solid defenseman. And then, of course, that offensive core, not the most threatening, but still very, very consistent. And led by some, I think, guys that can really jailbreak a shift in Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou.
Yep. Let's take some questions from you on Twitter/X. Kier at expressing_K. Unrelated to hockey, where can we get an eggnog frosty? Because that sounds delightful. I agree.
Does it?
Yeah, eggnog's always delightful, David. Because I tweeted out that had a playoff-like atmosphere. The local barn was rocking, gloves were dropped, and the good guys prevailed. Time for a Spits and Suds holiday postgame, eggnog frosties, and your thoughts questions. That's why. So thank you for that. This time of year, put eggnog in everything. I'm good.
I
Festive.
I feel like you're the first person I've ever met that enjoys eggnog.
Well, it's been on the shelf for years this time of year. What's so fascinating about eggnog is it has really nothing to do with the ingredients. Like, why is it only at Christmas? And maybe that's why it makes it special. But I don't have eggnog anymore, but I know as a kid, I loved it. It's too thick for me.
I like eggnog. To me, just also we have maybe like slightly different cultural backgrounds, so I wonder if maybe that played a factor. But eggnog, man, I didn't it wasn't until I got into college that I became familiar with what even it is. No eggnog for me.
No, absolutely. Chris Bernard says, way too many Frosties on the weekend, Christmas party, but I've got a Coca-Cola. That's all right. Salute, man. Crack it open. Love the defensive pairs tonight. I'd love to add a guy like Larkin at the deadline, meaning Dylan Larkin. Also stick tap to former Texas Stars Ty Fellbearer, making his NHL debut for the Avalanche tonight, 26 years old.
Ty Fellhaber, I think is.
Yeah, that's my bad. I read it and realized it.
I did not mean to.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I need to be corrected when I screwed that up. I saw it, and I should have just pronounced it properly. I don't know why. So thank you for jumping in.
By the way, Dallas has quite the history with players like this. You look at like Justin Dowling,
Yes.
who has kind of like sort of, has had like an NHL career. And I'm trying to think of some of the
Kiviranta.
yeah, Kiviranta, yeah, Colorado just has sort of taken in, I think, most of them. Of course, Riley Tufte in Boston, although I'm pretty sure he's not on the roster anymore. But yeah, they've been pretty good with these NHL also rans.
No, it just seems like it's so interesting that Colorado picks up so many, former stars. It's really fascinating. Yeah, I was trying to think of a. Oh my god, I can't think of his name. He was on the Stars 2 years ago, and then
Olofsson.
played. Yes, good
Yeah,
good
right.
pull.
Frederick. It's yeah. For a second, I was like, wait, am I getting old? I would always get Frederick Olofsson and Frederick Karlstrom
Yes,
mixed
yeah,
up.
mixed up. Yeah.
But yeah,
Well, it always makes us smarter when Dr. Meyer Patel checks in. Always great to have doctors listening to Spits and Suds. Didn't have a choice with them being shorthanded tonight, but worried about the defensive minutes piling up on Miro and Lindell. Yeah, Essa played a lot of minutes. Hope Pete can spread it out a bit more so they're fresher once April rolls around. Doc, I think that has to do with being shorthanded. Got to stay out of the penalty box a little bit more. Essa is so key on that kill. So you're right. Good point by you. Didn't really have a choice because of shorthanded. It was fascinating to see a little physicality out of Miro tonight around the net.
I mean, it's I'm not sure you necessarily kind of need him to be doing that,
No,
and I don't know how good he is
Brendan
at
Smith
it, but
came a running quick.
yeah. But by the way, like I think the other thing that just to add kind of what the doctor just kind of brought up, I do think, or I do hope at least that Bichsel is the type of player that could maybe sort of take at least a few seconds away from Lindell's shifts. Because he is a player that I think projects to be a genuine impact player on the penalty kill.
Yeah, yeah. Let's say the doctor went to Vanderbilt, by the way, and he's a sports neurologist. That's impressive.
Yeah, stick tap.
I mean, similar to Vanderbilt being in the SEC to make SEC smarter, the doc, Meyer Patel, being from Vanderbilt and being a part of Spits and Suds makes us smarter. So that's great. It all works out
Need
well.
all the help we can get.
Yeah, you like that? I threw a football reference in, an SEC football reference on Spits and Suds. All right. Zach Mitchell says a win like this just makes you think, do they really need to gamble trading off one of their aces? Do they really need a major acquisition? I like the physical game tonight. Feels like Bichsel ignited a spark. So here's my deal, David. I think Zach brings up a good point. Yes, because what's being masked in the wins are the lack of goals. And, that to me is like lack of scoring. I do want to bring up, so if you want to answer that, David, but I also want to bring up the use of the bumper more, and the puck movement to the bumper to me has semi-ignited just a little bit more of a flame on the power play. I felt as though the power play was mostly to the like weaving it around the outside. I really like going toward the middle, even if it's just a pass. It kind of keeps people moving.
Well, it's something that, and I'm going to go back to the shameless plug. Hey, by the way, check out my Star Stack. It's Substack. It's starstack.com or Starstack. I don't even know what the actual domain name is, but anyways, when I looked at it, when the power play was slumping, one of the things that I thought was interesting is that Dallas was getting chances. Like it's the worst, I'm sure, for many fans. It's just kind of the worst form of analysis, which is that, hey, just be patient, wait. They're getting their chances. They'll get some breaks. And sure enough, that's exactly what's happened, because to me, I was seeing this many weeks ago where I think Dallas was really good with their movement. And I think they kind of have been all year. The issue has really been, well, not finishing chances. And of course, there are still things that you don't want to see. Like, for example, I still don't ever want to see Miro Heiskanen take point shots on the power play.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I think their 1-3-1 movement has been really good, and it's just good to see them get rewarded for that. And yeah, I do think as the power play kind of gets not even better, but just luckier, just getting the right breaks. And as maybe, sort of people like Hintz and Robertson kind of just get a little bit luckier, like you're going
Right.
to see that offense kind of trend up, and it's going to be less of a talking point. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't need some, that they don't need some, offensive help at the deadline or anything like that. Just that I think there's parts of the offense will take care of itself.
We always try to add layers here at Spits and Suds, and producer Gregory Finley says the following: the Stars have a record of 2-6-2 against their next opponent, Toronto, with a goal differential of -17 in their last 10 games. So you don't say it's going to be a muck fest, ugly. So yeah, I think Toronto looks really good this year. So this is a really, really nice test against some East teams. This is a 3-game stretch that, I mean, 2 out of 3 would be wonderful. You get them at home, so this is great. So we'll see. But I love seeing games like this at AAC. I thought the barn was electric tonight. Really, when they give the fan base, David, a reason to get out of their seats, from the time that I've been a season ticket holder of this franchise, I feel like it's so much louder than it used to be. And I feel like the fan base is just so into the games. I remember I used to sit in my seats at the end, beginning of a next period, and basically the lower bowl might be like half full because everyone was at the clubs and everything like that. Like, I just feel as though, due to their winning ways the last few years, people are going not necessarily for the social component, but for the hockey component first and foremost.
I didn't realize people still went to clubs. Kind of, shows where I've been over the last like several decades. But real quick, I want to go back to the hockey portion, which is, if Dallas is going to get over this bizarre Toronto slump, a game like tonight is perfect because Toronto's big strength this year is their goaltending and sort of their kind of broad defense. So if Dallas does win, expect it to look exactly like tonight, where it's kind of I don't want to say low event, but sort of deliberately paced, if you will.
Yeah.
But anyways, getting back to your point, I don't really have a whole lot to say. Like, I'm
No, stick
sorry.
tap, stick tap to the locals. You didn't know there were clubs in the AAC, David?
Well, no, no, no. I didn't know there was a ton of noise because I
Uh,
usually watch the
yeah.
broadcast on mute. Is that strange?
No, that's fine. That's what I mean. That's why you never see Robert Tiffin in between periods, because he's hitting the clubs in between the periods.
That sounds like Robert Tiffin.
Starsthoughts.com, by the way. Just like David's Substack and his, you can read David in D Magazine. Robert's terrific as well. MB Tendy, always great to hear from you, MB. Seems like every time a Caps player was laying on the ice, Bichsel was standing over top them, guilty of laying the body. What a start to his career so far. Surely he won't be sent back down again, right? Thanks as always, Gavin. No, I don't think he will. I do love the throwback and the Darian Hatcher mentions. I just think it's really interesting that we have to go that far back to kind of have a local Stars comparison. We wanted that out of Alexiak, and it kind of happened late in his Stars career, where I thought Alexiak was just starting to blossom, and then he was left out there in the expansion draft. But yeah, we haven't had a player like him in a while, right, David?
Can I be a little pedantic with the Hatcher comparison?
Great word, yes.
Okay, so what I want to say is that, like, the thing that distinguishes Bichsel from Hatcher, and I watched plenty of Hatcher in his day, right, is that Hatcher was a violent defenseman, but he wasn't a pest. Bichsel likes to be a pest. You've seen this in the AHL and elsewhere. He likes to be a jerk. He likes to be in people's faces. He's a guy that really kind of has a little bit of that sort of Steve Ott DNA, that kind of Matthew Barnaby, which is odd because usually you think of these big like hulking physical defensemen as kind of just sort of straight up, not sort of the a little devil on your shoulders, as well as just a big tower and kaiju. and that's kind of he seems to relish in that, and it's part of what makes him. I think part of what has allowed him to succeed, which is that he's super confident and he's not afraid to be a jerk. In addition to being super physical.
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. William, great game, fun to watch. I saw that Harley was out. Any news on him? It's just straight illness. So hopefully he'll be back. But it's an illness issue, not an injury issue. Okay. Crow Wi-Fi says all Robertson on the third goal, outstanding. He also says I didn't know a young Vin Diesel was coaching the Capitals.
Who's the coach again? I already forgotten, but what's his name?
Oh my gosh.
Oh, we know neither one of us. Yeah, yeah. Like I mean, of course, like I know who he is, but he's. I thought he looked more like.
Well, let's get his name first. Spencer Carberry.
Oh man, who
He you know, I mean, we know this. He coached the Hershey Bears for a while.
I mean, to me, I don't know. I was trying to think of like Jeffrey Wright on steroids, but I can see a little bit of the Vin Diesel.
Yeah, especially since he shaved his head, completely. All right. The other comparison you could say is Ed Kowalchuk, the lead singer of Live.
Ed, oh my god, what is it? A Live reference?
It's one of my favorite bands.
While we're at it, let's talk about the Meat Puppets and Alice in Chains.
All right, sorry. When I have Castillo, I always have to stick to hockey. All right, fine, we'll stick to.
I mean, if we started like talking about like our personal interests, like I don't know.
You're right. No one would listen. No, I hear you. It's just I'm trying to have some fun. And it was a good reference to Spencer Carberry. So
I'm not here for fun, Gavin. And if you don't want to have fun, I can talk about my favorite sci-fi author, which is James Blish, and we can talk about like his books, and then everyone's going to stop listening.
Yeah, we should mention, okay, to end this podcast, that a storyline was the Capitals had won 10 straight on the road. So this was pretty, seasoned as far as a victory to end a 10-game winning streak. So that's impressive. Also want to mention, we mentioned Capitals, Dylan Strome. What a terrific player he's been for the Capitals. So, yeah, I just thought there were a lot of players that flashed tonight, and I can't say it enough. I truly enjoyed Charlie Lindgren. I thought made some terrific saves. I love the back and forth between him and Oettinger. There was just at one point, and the families know each other because they're from the same area in Minnesota. I thought that was a really cool story, but there was one where Lindgren made this awesome save on the Stars and they went back down the ice, and then the Caps looked like they were going to score, but Oettinger, made some great saves too. So this game had a lot of various dynamics.
Yeah, no, it was a really not just like a complete win, but also a kind of really interesting game in and of itself. And you also had, I think, players like on Washington's side that are really kind of firing on all cylinders, right? Don't forget their big Russian winger. I've already like forgotten his name, Alexei, not Poitras, but anyways, they're the big Russian. He was former third rounder, right? Like he's been excellent. Even Pierre-Luc Dubois like actually contributed to the offense, which is kind of like nobody really saw coming because he's just been kicked around the league at this point.
That's what I'm saying. He was terrific tonight. I thought he was one of the better players on the ice.
Yeah, and sort of that contrast to Alexei Protas. There you go. God dang it. And then contrast that to Dallas, who's had a lot of like struggling forwards, but who are kind of really really kind of like hitting their stride tonight. And I think that's the thing that really is going to like elevate Dallas into that, hey, we're a top 4 team. You can see us in the Western Conference Finals again, which is their offense, because that's always been their strength for the last years.
Yeah. The other guy that I thought played pretty good, but it's pretty amazing that he has not been able to break this Capitals lineup, is Jacob Verana. So,
I mean, his sort of struggles are kind of well documented, but when he is just like on his own and just in a vacuum, absolutely one of the more skilled offensive forwards. I think in his age group, like period. Like I really didn't think he has that kind of talent when he's just kind of when he's whole, if you will.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He just hadn't played since November 21st, so he cracks the Capitals lineup. So, just there were just a lot of players that flashed tonight, and these are the post games I love when it's tough to really mention a lot of the negatives because there were not tonight. The Stars played really well, and yeah, it was just a fun game at the AAC. All right, my man. Anything else you want to mention?
No, I cannot think of a single thing except for thank you as always, not just you, Gavin Spittle, but also the listeners of Spits and Suds. And yeah, it's always fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Substack to support David Castillo is at Starstack. You can follow him on Twitter. He's a terrific follow. David's Castillo. One of the things I like about David is he'll ask questions, that make you think and respond to him. Like, okay, what defenseman was as good on the board? So, like, interesting things like that. It made me go back in my mind and think of like a Zdeno Char or players like that. So, you can follow him at David Castillo. And the other aspect is obviously the writing at D Magazine that he does. So when you see a recent article come out, just click, click, click. Same goes for Robert, as well as Sean Shapiro, as D Magazine is terrific with their Stars coverage. So that's going to do it for us. And we'll be back with another episode really, really soon. For David Castillo, I'm Gavin Spittle. This has been a wonderful edition of Spits and Suds. Happy holidays, everyone. And thank you for your support as we make our way toward 2025. Have a great day, everyone.